Please welcome Aaron Reid from Sentient.
Good afternoon. I'm excited to be here. I'm Aaron Reid. I'm the Chief Behavioral Scientist at Sentient, and we have actually quite a few people from Sentient here today. Hopefully you've had a chance to meet some of our folks. Brendan and Cyrus and Liam and Pam Merriman, just a recent UNH graduate, just joined us about a month ago, 2 months ago. Tony and Sylvia and Alina and Christina, gosh, a lot of Sentient folks here. I get to do all the fun work. This is your work, so I'm glad that you're going to see it, and I get to be the one that talks about it. So thank you guys for your work. I'm going to talk about the automation of behavioral science. If my advisor heard me say that, she'd probably kill me. I'm not trying to put scientists out of business. I'm trying to get technology built so scientists can focus on insights rather than doing the manual work. A quick introduction to Sentient, just to give you a sense. I have an academic background. I'm a psychologist, but I love business. And when I came out of academia and back into business, I was amazed at the pace of work. At Sentient, we've conducted over 10,000 scientific experiments since we were founded. The pace is incredible. We'll launch a study on Monday and we'll have data back the next day to analyze, and I'm going to show you some of that today. You can also see up here some of our clients, so you get a sense of who is working with us. We're advancing behavioral science, and these are the companies that want to have a competitive advantage, so they're using us in their comms testing, and I will show you some examples of that. I want to start off with the problem, and the problem for market research, and I think we've known this for a long time, is that often consumers won't tell us how they truly feel because they're afraid of social embarrassment. Why not just run a focus group? Well, I want to give you an example of why we shouldn't just run a focus group.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the fifth person with the white t-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
Two. Three.
But on the third trial, something happens.
Two.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
Oh my goodness, I always use that when I talk about focus groups. I like focus groups, they're good for discovery, but we can't expect scientific evidence to come out of them. If something such as your physical perception is that malleable based on the opinions of people around you, imagine the answers you're going to give when we're asking you a question about which product you prefer or what you're going to do in the future if you're a consumer. So that's part of the problem. Often consumers won't tell us how they truly feel because they're afraid of social embarrassment. But there's actually a bigger problem, and we've learned this from behavioral science, is that consumers actually often can't tell us the true drivers of their behavior because they don't have conscious access to it. But it gets even worse because in surveys we go ahead and ask people their opinions and the drivers of their behavior, and they want to tell us, so even if they don't have conscious access to these drivers, they're going to give us an answer. And if you're a business and you're acting off of inaccurate information, you're not going to be as successful. To make that problem even worse, take a look at that data point on the top of that slide. In 2012, there was a survey of 24,000 people. 95% of them reported that advertising does not affect their behavior. The market research industry then turns around and asks those same people whom advertising doesn't affect their opinions of our ads. If you want my opinion, we don't want the general population's opinion of our advertising. We don't want to know how people feel about our advertising. We want to understand how our advertising makes people feel. And to take it even a step further, we want to understand how advertising makes people feel about our brand. And in order to do that, we have to be able to capture the actual emotional reaction. And the emotional reaction is going to come in two forms. This is the trailer for Incredibles 2, most successful animated film launch in history. The heat map is eye tracking data. We're tracking where people are looking while they're watching this. The line that's coming across the screen is the emotion they're expressing on their face that we're capturing through a webcam. If it's blue, it's a positive emotion. If it goes red, it's a negative emotion.
You have power! Yeah, baby!
Everybody loves that baby laugh. You can't help the smile. This is a genuine smile on my face, and that's what the webcam is capturing, the degree that our entire population is experiencing an emotion while they're watching that ad. That is engagement. That's emotional engagement with the ad, but that's only half of the equation. We want to understand not just whether people are emotionally engaged with the ad itself, we want to understand if they're more emotionally positive towards our brand after exposure. So we need to be able to measure both engagement and influence when we're looking at ads. Moment by moment attention and affect are captured with webcams, eye tracking and facial coding. And then change in perceptions of the brand are captured using something called implicit association testing, which is was developed by social psychologists to study stereotypes and biases. And we're going to show you some examples of that today. Over 3 years and 200 ads on 14,000 consumers gave us some evidence that adding in these measures of emotional engagement and emotional influence are better able to predict online virality of an ad. So we had behavioral data on 200 ads. Behavioral data meaning the number of online views, the number of social shares, and the total digital share of voice for these 200 ads. We asked people their opinions of the ads. How do you feel about this ad on a 1 to 7 scale? You know, your typical research approach. And then we simply did correlations between their opinions and that actual social sharing data. People's opinions of ads actually correlate significantly with the success of an ad. It's about a 0.35 correlation, 0.37 correlation, only accounting for 14% of the actual variance in online views. If we add facial coding into that equation, your predictive accuracy goes up significantly. We're able to account for 47% of the total share of online views when you add emotional engagement into the equation. But we go one step further to measure emotional influence, and the correlation goes up to 0.81, accounting for 65% of the total online views of an ad. That's telling us that people's opinions are not giving us enough insight as to what makes an ad viral or not. We need to measure the emotional engagement and also measure the emotional impact. Just to make sure, we have some emotional branding too. This is a study that we did with Facebook, the largest consumer neuroscience ad testing study in history. Over 40,000 participants on 500 ads. And these measures are proven not just to be more accurate, but also to be more reliable. In this study, we actually measured, we split the sample and tested half of the people using exactly the same stimuli and another half of the people using exactly the same stimuli. And then we looked at the correlation between the results of those two independent samples on these implicit measures, and you get a sense of just how reliable these measures are. The quick conscious recall, implicit discrete associations, and proportion of emotion model, those are the correlations between the two random samples. 0.99, 0.99, 0.99. So not only is this more predictive, but it's also more reliable than some other measures that are in the industry. Don't feel good. Try not to feel good. This is what we call a prime. When I show you a picture of a baby, this is all about babies today, and I say try not to feel good, what happens? Generally, we feel good when we see babies. You can try not to feel good, but it's already happened. We call that an automatic association or irrepressible cognition. You can try not to feel good, but honestly, you already have. Irrepressible cognition, it happens without our conscious control. We want to be able to understand what happens automatically for consumers when they see our brands or when they're exposed to our advertising or see our packs, whatever our brand touch points are. So try not to feel good, it's hard not to. Try not to feel scared. if you have a phobia of snakes, that's a scary picture. It's actually quite a beautiful picture, but if you have a phobia of snakes, it's a scary picture. So these automatic associations are both positive and negative. But they're not just these innate examples, babies and snakes. The vast majority of our associations are learned. We weren't born with an aversion to cop cars in our rearview mirror. That developed over time. And this actually makes a really good point about automatic associations or neural networks. They essentially are formed by the consistent pairing of two concepts, and this is what we do with our marketing. We're pairing our brand with some emotion, some attribute, and we think that that's going to be motivational for consumers. The more emotion that people experience at the coupling of two concepts, the stronger the memories are cemented. So emotion is essentially a memory cementing mechanism. You don't have to see that very many times to form an automatic negative association with cop cars in the rearview mirror. Does that make sense? It basically works in this way. Neural networks, simplified version of this. Neural networks form by the coupling of two concepts. And when you think about it from a brand perspective, for example, Heineken, you have an association network around that brand. It might be refreshing, cool, social, whatever your attitudes are. And they're automatic. So when you see that brand, they come to mind. They're more cognitively accessible. That map might be different for a brand like Facebook. You might overlap on an attribute like social, but that brand Facebook has different associations with it. Informative, connected. The greater you value those associations, the stronger the influence they have on your behavior toward or away from a brand. That's what we call right events. That's how they're formed. The question from an insights perspective is, how do you know? How do you read it? The reading events happen automatically with primes. When we show you Heineken, very briefly for just half a second, your automatic associations with that brand become more cognitively accessible. And so if we have technology that can read the degree to which that brand facilitates a judgment or speed, we can measure the strength of those associations in your non-conscious mind without asking you any questions. Same with Facebook. There's another prime. So how might this work in a technology? This is a technology. It's pulled, again, from the social psychology literature on stereotypes and biases. This was originally developed to measure people's attitudes towards other groups of people without asking them any questions. So if you are trying to study stereotypes or biases, you can't simply ask somebody, are you biased towards this other group of people, and expect to have a valid answer. You need to be able to measure that without asking questions. And so we pulled that and said that actually can be used to measure anything that people may not have full conscious access to. In this case, you can see some judgments are being made. Positive and negative emotions are simply being sorted into negative and positive categories. And we're timing respondents to see how long it takes them to make those judgments down to the millisecond. We're also capturing the velocity of their swipe on mobile devices, which is another measure of the intensity of their judgment. You create a baseline for each individual consumer, and then you enter into the equation this prime. And I think we've got snakes and babies up there right now. That prime influences your ability to make that judgment. If you have a snake phobia and I show you a snake and then show you a positive emotion, it takes you longer to sort that emotion and you make more errors because your gut level reaction is to swipe away. So I'm not asking you if you don't like snakes, I'm priming you with snakes and then seeing how it influences an independent objective judgment. Your millisecond response time tells me the strength of that association, positive or negative. Of course, we can't, report to clients millisecond response times as like insight data. You've got to norm this stuff. So we take that and norm it, the velocity data, the response time data, the accuracy of the response, put it on a 200 scale. 100 is essentially neutral. Above 100 is a positive automatic association. Below 100 is a negative automatic association. And the data looks like this. People like the babies the most. This is actual data from this study. And if you want to on your phone, you can take that study right now, implicit emotion. Then the woman, then a drop off, but still positive for the man. And then the spider. I thought that was going to be more negative, but he's kind of a cute spider, big eyes. Then the cop car. That was actually delivered with an audio prime of a siren going off. And then the snake. So this just shows you it works. This is positive and aversive stimuli. It works. But now think of it like in terms of brands or personalities, for example. Here is a study. Again, you can take this on your phone right now. If you go to bit.ly/star power study, this will measure your automatic associations with some prominent figures in the world right now. And it's not just positive or negative. You can measure specific individual attributes like trustworthiness or inspirational. I'll show you with this video how that works. As this comes up on the phone, you can see now the categories, instead of positive and negative, are inspiring and not inspiring. So you're sorting words into the correct category. We're going to create a baseline for you because everybody has a different natural speed. And we want to be able to norm within you, the individual consumer. And then we're going to interrupt your cognitive judgments with primes and see whether those primes help facilitate your judgment or hinder your judgment. So if you like Tom Brady, you think he's motivating and inspiring, you can make that judgment more quickly after seeing his prime. This tells us how people feel about these figures without asking them any explicit questions at all. How do you feel about Donald Trump? I don't want to ask you. I just want to prime you and see if you're faster sorting positive or negative emotions. How do you apply this then to marketing? Well, it can help you avert really costly mistakes. Does everybody remember this ad from PepsiCo? You know, if SNL is making parodies of your ad, you've made a really big mistake. But this would be so simple to test. I mean, it's really beautifully creative. The ad itself is just incredibly well executed. We just ran the study really quickly to demonstrate this. You have two groups of people, one that you measure their attitudes towards Pepsi and don't show them the ad. A second group that you show them the ad and then measure their attitudes towards Pepsi using that implicit technology. And here's the data. 104, so positive attitudes towards Pepsi beforehand. Significant decline after a single exposure to that Kendall Jenner ad. If you had that data, would you spend your marketing budget on that ad? Probably not. You're not looking for a decline. You can actually, so that was bad. They pulled it very quickly, just after 2 days, I think. How about this one? Do you remember this one? Oh my goodness. So this is a great example. This was originally a 30-second spot that was trimmed down to a 16, then ultimately trimmed down to 3 seconds for digital feed. So it could be placed in Facebook and Instagram, etc. And the 30-second spot was actually pretty successful. You could tell a broader story around what we were doing. But when you trim it down to 3 seconds, it was not optimized. That's it. I just heard somebody moan, right? Somebody thought that was a good idea. Oh, goodness. So I was sitting on my couch one Sunday afternoon trying to prepare for a talk, and I was like, I need some evidence of like really bad marketing decisions. And I was like, oh, the Dove thing. So 800 consumers, 2 hours, this data came back to my computer. That's the implicit emotional reaction to that image itself. That was a social media image. Somebody snapped and got a lot of press. Negative 97, negative, below 100 is a negative response. Automatic negative response to your marketing campaign. Here's the change in opinion towards Dove after a single exposure to the 3 second clip. A significant drop, almost a 10-point drop in impression of your brand. That data was collected on 800 consumers in 2 hours. That's the power of automated behavioral science. Why wouldn't you be testing that if you were making those decisions around that brand? So to do a little bit more fun examples, not all of them are disasters, you can find, by automating behavioral science, general principles that can then be used again and again in your creative development. I want to tell the story of these 3 Super Bowl ads from last year. Let's take a little vote. Who was the winner? Was it Stella Artois, Matt Damon? Was it Diet Coke? Or was it Amazon Alexa? Alexa. Everybody loves that commercial, right? Anybody remember the Diet Coke ad? So a few things are going to happen when I play this video. You're going to again see the heat map. This is the eye tracking. This is where people are looking. So we're not just going to test implicit associations. We're going to measure engagement with eye tracking using webcams. The line that comes across the screen is the affect. That's the emotional response captured through webcams, again, by facial coding. So coding the expression on people's faces while they watch the ad. And along the bottom, what you're seeing is where the ad ranks in a database of over 1,000 ads on each of those measures. For those of you in the audience who really appreciate this kind of thing, this is evidence that this is more than just a cool tool. That model at the bottom, attention, affect, memory, and desirability, is a psychological theory of persuasion. So we've essentially grounded this in psychological theory and then used good measurement for each of those steps along that theory. So it's not just a cool tool, it's based in the psychology of persuasion. Let's see how Diet Coke does.
Diet Coke Twisted Mango, because, oh, that's why. Can't help it. Hey, still going. Maybe slowing it down. Maybe it's getting sexier. I don't know. Mango does.
That ad, like, is very polarizing in people's opinions. I know some people that love it, and I know some people that absolutely hate it. It is so engaging. You can't take your eyes off the screen. There's something about the yellow background and the way that she's dancing and the music, but it's so engaging for apparently all the wrong reasons, because it's only in the 32nd percentile in terms of memory, and it's below average in terms of desirability, meaning lift for the brand is below average. That's a Super Bowl ad, costs $5 million to run that on Super Bowl day. Here is Matt Damon.
Such a simple thing.
And Stella Artois.
At the turn of a tap. It's like magic. It takes no time at all. And yet millions of people in the developing world walk up to 6 hours every day for water. This chalice can change that. If just 1% of you watching this buys one, we could give clean water to 1 million people for 5 years. Join Stella Artois and water.org and help give back their precious time.
This ad actually holds a lot of promise. You see actually the eye tracking at the end, you can see it goes actually right to their call to action. Go to water.org. But it has a problem, and that's the emotional engagement. It's only in the 11th percentile. You see how flat that is? Right around 0%, meaning not very many people are actually expressing positive or negative emotion. And that builds a really big point, that it's not the presence of negative emotion that's the enemy of good advertising. It's actually the absence of any emotion that's the enemy of good advertising. Negative emotion can be used to really good effect, especially if you're taking someone along a story arc and your brand is then the hero that pays off in a positive way against that negative emotion. Here, we basically just don't have any emotion, and so it's not engaging. Why does it score high on attention? Well, it's Matt Damon. And it scores high on memory because it actually has a really nice manipulation with that chalice, the Stella Artois chalice. You see the focus on the face, and it's Matt Damon. They're really focused right in on Matt Damon throughout most of that ad. Whenever he raises the glass, he's raising it up to his face, and all the attention goes down to the chalice. So you remember this is from Stella. You just weren't that emotionally engaged in it, and therefore you're not really moving the needle for the brand. Last one.
In Austin, it's 60 degrees with a Alexa?
Amazon's Alexa lost her voice this morning, causing a
Alexa lost her voice? How is that even possible?
We have the replacements ready, just say the word.
And you're sure this is gonna work?
Yeah.
Alexa, show me a recipe for a grilled cheese sandwich.
Pathetic. You're 32 years of age, and you don't know how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. Its name is the recipe, you
Alexa, how far is Mars?
Oh, how far is Mars? Well, how am I supposed to know? I've never been there. This guy want to go to Mars. For what? There's not even oxygen there.
Alexa, set the mood.
Now setting the mood. You're in the bush, and you're just so dirty, and you're so sweaty, because it's hot in that bush.
Alexa, reboot.
Alexa, play some country music.
Oh,
I don't dance now, I make money moves.
No, Alexa, country music.
I be in and out them banks so much I know they tired of me.
Alexa, call Brandon.
I'm afraid Brandon is a little tied up. But do let me know if there's anything I can help you with. Jessica? Good boy.
Thanks, guys, but I'll take it from here.
See that emotional response? And look at the peaks. All of those jokes are landing. That's people smiling. And they're also attaching it to the brand. 87th percentile in terms of attention, people's eyes are glued to the screen. Affect is the emotion, they're very emotional during that ad. And it's above average on memory, but there's room for improvement there. And then the 76th percentile in terms of improving impressions for the brand. So this is going to move the needle on immediate sales for Amazon. When you've automated behavioral science in that way, you can start to look and get a database with larger sample in it to get fundamental insights on the effectiveness of advertising. And so you end up with a scorecard that looks something along these lines, and you can say, where's my ad falling down? Imagine if you're in marketing and you do this not on your final copy, but you do it on your rough cut edits to optimize that and make sure you have the right 30 or the right 60. But imagine if you took it even further upstream and did it in your animatic stage or your storyboard stage, so you knew you were going to be delivering on the perceptions that you're trying to change in the consumer mind. You can optimize your budgets and your spend by automating behavioral science earlier in the creative development stage. That's the content we had for you today, and if there's some time for questions, I'd love to answer anything that you have.